Good morning, everybody. I think everybody's had a chance to get a plate of food and at least one cup of coffee. But again, just recognizing that people have different schedules, and this is a little bit of a crossroads event in terms of people's days. I'm going to interrupt for just a few minutes. First of all, there's a little blue tag on everybody's napkin, and that pin, if you fold it over and attach it to a piece of clothing, it gives you access to the walker for the day, which is open after today's brunch, and anybody who'd like to enjoy going through the spectacular galleries and the new wing of the walker, now the old new wing, it's been open for a few years, please do that. And also know that we have a videographer over here who would be happy to once again video people who want to tell stories or leave remembrances or messages for the family to enjoy in the future. That's a nice opportunity for a one-on-one. But we also have this mic, and I know that there's somebody in particular that I want to hand it to who played a very important role in the family's life for a number of years, particularly in the wake of Dad leaving Kohl's Media and the family dealing with the repercussions of that. We relied very, very heavily on David Cox, who was the first non-family CEO of the business and who proved to be a remarkable leader, not only for the company, but also for the family. So I want to introduce David Cox, and his wife Vicki is here as well. And David has a few things he'd like to say. Thanks.
Thank you, Jay. I can't tell you how happy I am to be here with the Kohl's family once again. I have nothing but very, very fond memories. And you should know that as a family, you stand so high. If you think of some of the people in the industry whose families were not able to come to decisions and get behind them and that kind of thing, the Kohl's family really set a very wonderful record, and that was a great achievement. And it was a great pleasure for me, believe me, a great pleasure for me to be with you. The celebration for John yesterday was so terrific. I mean, I hesitate to try to follow on because everybody was so poignant about John and so knowing. And I learned a lot, I must say. Some of the things that just reinforced things I already knew. Jay mentioned John's integrity, which was extremely important for me, and I'm sure for all of you. And while I had, during my business career, certainly I did not run very often into integrity problems. With the Kohl's family and Kohl's Media, there was never any question about what came first. Integrity was always first, and that was wonderful for somebody who is not a family member coming from the outside. To know that is so valuable. The other side, which which I had to laugh, was when Paige mentioned about John talking, and she would get revved up and then interrupt, and then he'd say, "Now wait," and then, oh, I remember that so well. And at first, it always happened, and then just like she said, it was always worth waiting, and you would come down. But then I learned just sit there and be calm and be quiet, and you'll hear it well. On the other hand, John was very much known for brevity and a couple of things, and meticulousness. And I'll give you a couple of incidents, and then I'm going to get out of the way. I actually have to go to the airport. We're going to go see our granddaughters in Washington, D.C. On the meticulous side, when he was interviewing me and Vicki for the job, one of the things he suggested was he would like he and Sage to come by our house and meet our children, and then go out to dinner afterward. And we were supposed to choose the restaurant. So we said to our sons, "Now you've got to be on your best behavior. No messing around, no chasing each other, none of that kind of stuff." Which they were. That was fine. And then we picked a Lebanese restaurant in the Northeast to go out to dinner. And when it was great. We had been there the week before. It was really great. We get there, we realized this is all new for John and Sage. But they were very nice and very polite, and I got hired. So you can see that the Lebanese restaurant worked out okay. Then the other one that was of John's characteristics that I remember was both brevity and, in some cases, sort of arcane language. And when I first joined the company, John would, at least once a week, we'd sit down in his office and he would have a file folder. Somebody mentioned John's neatness. I wrote the perfect order. And he would go through the file folder with me, and whatever paper happened to be on top would be the first thing you'd talk about, and then you'd go on down. And there might be an important business issue halfway down, but you would go through the other things each time. And what I really remember was of course he was invited to every event in the city. He'd get a letter saying, could you come to this and come to that? And he would write back, say to me, and then he would write back, I shan't be able to come. And I thought, oh my God. When somebody got a letter saying shan't, this must be amazing. So in thinking about John, I have to say that when I think about John up there in heaven at his desk with his meticulous files, I shan't ever forget you, John.
Who are you?
I'm Russell Coles. I'm John's younger brother.
We got so good at this yesterday.
I live in Minneapolis. I've lived here most of my life. Hello? I just wanted to recognize Vicki, because not only was David a wonderful champion for the kind of values that Coles Media had expressed up until the time that he took the helm, but also Vicki was involved in the background in many of the same kinds of community affairs and organizations that my mother and Sage also endorsed and supported, and Vicki worked very, very hard on many of these causes which have been dear to the Coles family's heart for as long as I can remember. So Vicki, I just wanted to thank you for carrying on that tradition for all of us, and what a great job you did. Thank you so much.
Let me just follow up for a second. This is actually to Vicki. Who are you? Okay, let's project. Tribute to Vicki, who was my high school teacher, who made my Greek class come alive and make me get excited, not make me. I chose to get excited. Learning about Odysseus and the Iliad and Homer, and she was a tough teacher. She wasn't easy. And I survived at Blake, which is our high school. But anyway, Vicki, thank you. You're one of the teachers. As an oblique, David, we had David in the business a little bit. As an oblique, thank you also to your contribution teaching at Blake.
Thank you so much.
Well, as they say in the theater, when a beloved actor is leaving for the final time, could we have a round of applause for David and Vicki? This is an opportunity, if there are others who'd like to speak. There's no program at this point. Can Paige and I sing? No. That was last fall. I don't. Saved by Mom.
Into the, like so? Okay, like so. Some people have told me that, and certainly that they really, really liked the program yesterday in that extraordinary space. Well, me too. I learned a fair amount myself, but I want you all to know that the people who really get the credit for this are what we call the kids. And the kids, I think all four are right here today. They deserve such a hand, and their spouses. They really are great. Oh, look at that. So glad I got that off my chest, because I thought, this has got to be, that's where the spotlight should be. And the other thing I just want to say about yesterday, I laughed, I cried, Mariah and I were just shifting a wet Kleenex back and forth, but there was a moment where I felt, he sounds like a really interesting guy. I'm glad I knew him.
Well, I told some people after yesterday's event that I was sort of laughing because I realized Dad trained us all to be able to pull off something like yesterday. I mean, that was Dad's organizing training at its best, and also his ability to create a kind of safe, supportive space for the kids, for everybody to get up. And I loved my siblings and their remarks, each and every one. That was a great family moment for us. As well as Roger Hale. By God, we got to get a copy of that speech and circulate that. Yeah. Roger is not here that I know of, but Roger, if you are, stand up. Yeah. Good, and I know that, good, welcome. Hello, Richard, Helen, Mary Lynn. Help yourselves to some food and a microphone at any point. Yeah. All
right. Yesterday we were all extolling John's virtues, and a couple of people referred to the fact that maybe John was not a saint, but almost. I have a little story that I remember from long ago when our family rented a wonderful house during the summer. This was before Glendalough. And I was born in 1936, and this would have been pre my memory and then into my early memory, maybe into the early 1940s. John probably was about 11 or 12, and I probably heard this story because I doubt if I actually remembered it from having been there, but someone, Morley or Sally, one of our sisters, or someone told me the story about John when he was maybe 10 or 11. He had a great friend whose name was John Whitney, and John Whitney and John were buddies and playmates, and one day someone had given them balloons. I think it was maybe the leftover aftermath of a party at this house, which was called the Pink Palace, and it was about 50 or 60 feet above the lake, and there was a road between the house and the lake on which lots of normal traffic passed around Lake Minnetonka. And John Whitney and my brother filled these balloons with water. Does anyone remember water balloons? I mean, who doesn't remember water? And John Whitney proceeded to throw the water balloons up over the edge of the cliff on which the house stood, down onto the road. And they thought this was wonderful because some of the cars would come by and splash the water balloons, and they thought this was great fun to watch, and they'd kind of hide down behind the bushes and see what happens. Well, of course, one of the last cars that they hit with the water balloon was the local Wayzata police. And so the story goes that the police came up to the house and proceeded to give some kind of just talk to John and John Whitney about how dangerous this was, and this was, you know, life-threatening and blah, blah, blah. And you can imagine John's chagrin at that point, and who knows whether our father and mother were involved in this meeting with the police, but I'm sure that this was one of those kinds of incidents that we've all, you know, been on at some point in our life on that learning curve where we discover what is okay and what is not okay.
Hi, everyone. Right here? Okay. I'm Melissa Coles. I'm Russell Coles' oldest daughter. And it's great to see all your faces and be part of this family. I have so many lipstick on it. This is long overdue, and I wanted to say to you, Sage, and to John, if he was here, how grateful I am to you. And my sister Amy would say this as well, how you and your family always welcomed us, always with warm, welcoming arms, no judgment. You always extended invitations, and, you know, Fuller, where's Fuller? Fuller, Jay, Paige, Connie, Tess, Jane, all of you, Anne. It's just such a warm, welcoming, loving family. And I was growing up, I used to think, I want to have a family like this. I want to have my own family like this. And it was an example for me. The love that you all share together, the honesty, and the laughter. And I remember a time when we were living at your place. I think you had brought that up yesterday. And my sister Amy and I had chicken pox. And it was really fun living in your house, I have to say. It was great. It was great. And Fuller, I caused a lot of problems for Fuller. But we had fun. We had fun. And you had that great pet white rat with the weird eyes. Jane, I think you were away at college. Yeah. Oh, it was Jane's. Okay. And Jay, you came to visit from Texas, I think, maybe. But anyways, but we had a great Arizona. Yeah. My sister Amy and I, we had this Mrs. Thomas. We kind of caused her some issues, but I'm sure we all remember Mrs. Thomas very fondly. Yes. Yeah, I know. She was a great hugger. But so with Uncle John, I remember that he just really loved his chocolate chip cookies. And I don't know if you remember, they would be in the kitchen, and they were stacked methodically one on top of the other. So you couldn't just grab one and get away with it. It wasn't like you could stick your hand in; it was noticed. So my sister Amy and I would come home from school, and Mrs. T would be cooking in the kitchen or doing something, and we would dare each other. We could just, the counter was up here, and if we could grab a cookie and see if it would be unnoticed. But soon enough, we didn't get away with that. So I think John had the cookie jar moved up on a higher shelf. Oh, anyways, but Sage, thank you for always including Amy and I always in your life, and John as well. And I'm really grateful and to you and your family. So, always do it.
Absolutely.
I'm not a family member. Though, my name is Jocelyn Fansler, and I have been a dear friend of the Coles for a long time, though at moments I was not there and now I'm back again. Jane is joined at my heart on some level, as is Fuller and Jay, Tessa, Sade. But I had to just say something which was so remarkable. When we come into the world, we figure out the basic things we need to navigate life. And then we start to choose. And we choose, and we choose, and we choose. And we have different criteria for the choices that we make. Some lead from their heart, some lead from their head, some lead from their bodies. But as individuals, we all do our best to navigate this amorphous thing called life. And I am somebody who gets her head and heart and self around a passion, and it drags me like a fly in a river looking for trout. And I don't have a choice because my heart takes me there. And I put up a Google alert one day for John Coles because I heard he wasn't well. And the Google alert started to explode on my BlackBerry. A Google alert is when they let you know something's been written about something or someone in the universe. And my BlackBerry could not be silenced. The world exploded with information about John Coles. And I read every single word because I was so amazed that a man had lived his life with such breadth, such depth, such tremendous perspective and vision. And he did it from the get-go. How did he do that? And the thing that he did as a byproduct of the last breath he took at dusk was to give me a realization of perspective and an appreciation that if you live your life encompassing the whole, which is what Ira was talking about in this prayer, if you do that, me becomes so small and the world becomes so much better.
I'm told I don't have to stand up if I don't want to. I don't want to. I'm getting a hang of this, what I don't want. Okay. Yeah, I am. But something that Jossie referred to that I want to respond to, one of the things John did in these last 3 years, which have been remarkable, because he knew then, having refused all the, the big chemicals and so forth that he might have had, we knew then that, that time would run out. So these last 3 years was such a gift because we had the time to and wherewithal to do what he could do, what he wanted to do and could do. And so we've had such a gift in these last 3 years. They've been just remarkable. In that time, he made a list of relatives, particularly from his Iowa roots, that he wanted to see again. And I knew most of them, but I'd never spent a great deal of time with them. But very systematically, I think we visited 8 families over a period of maybe a couple of years. In the beginning, I'm not sure he even knew why he wanted to see them. But as we went along, it became clearer and clearer, and he really wanted to tell them how proud he was of his Iowa roots. So they went so deep. That was where he took me when we first met, to the Raccoon River in Des Moines, Iowa. And that's where he played and where he really grew up. And until he was, how old? 10 or so, when he moved up here with his family. But those sessions got more and more moving. Finally, the last one was just eureka. He poured it out. They were stunned, but felt totally satisfied, and it didn't feel that we left anything out in the other visits. It just got, as he got clearer and clearer about that. So that pride in those roots, Jossie, was a big pillar in his life.
The question I was just asked is, who am I? And that's actually what I wanted to talk about. I'm Margaret Bullitt Jonas. I'm a daughter of Sally Cole's sister, my Uncle John is who I'm remembering. Who am I? Actually, that's the question. I'm thinking about how who we are is formed by our relationships with each other. And I look around the room and I see people I've known all my life, and I've loved all my life, and who have shaped me, and who maybe to some degree I've shaped. So I can walk around in this illusion that I'm just one individual person, but I think the fact is we're composed of our relationships, of the people we allow into our lives and the people whose lives we affect. I just a couple weeks ago, my husband Jonas and I were down in DC, and we saw Wendell Berry, the poet, get a wonderful award of God's Stewardship of the Earth Award or something. God's Creation Care, Steward, just a wonderful award. And he's this really old man, and he said, he basically said he was made up of his relationships. He said, if you took away from me and what I've done, the place where I grew up, my parents, my family, the person I married, my friends, my allies, my teachers, if you took all those people away from me, I would disappear with a barely audible pop. And I just want to thank, I just want to thank all of you those of you who some of you I've just seen today, but especially want to speak to those of you who I've known all my life and to say thank you. And I want to thank John, and I want to thank John and Sage. Something sort of what Melissa was saying, that the two of you really gave me such hope, seeing your love for each other as a couple, to know that it was possible to have a relationship like that. And I feel like I got blessed enough to enjoy a relationship like that. But that's been very, very important to me, Sage. So I want to say thank you to you and to John and to all of us who somehow were so interrelated in ways we probably can't even name. Thank you.
Thank you.
There's plenty more food, there's more coffee, and here's Fuller.
Once again, back for another moment. But one thing I realized after dinner last night, or during dinner, that we've been talking you've been hearing a bit from the Coles, from our branch of the family fairly loudly. But I realized later in the evening there's a branch of the family we haven't acknowledged much that was very much a close sister of John's, and that's the Ballantyne. And Morley passed away 2009. And just to bring her into the room, and we've got a few more of the Ballantyne family here today, but just know that Russell's here and Sally sent in a note, and I realized later in the evening that just acknowledging that Morley and Ballantyne branch has been a big family powerhouse and working together. So anyways, Ballantynes, yay.
Well, there we go.
Fuller, you did it. I'm Richard Ballantyne. I'm Morley Coles Ballantyne's oldest child. Following me are Elizabeth, Bill, and Helen, who've all been here this weekend and enjoyed seeing all of you. A couple of vignettes. I was a student at Phillips Exeter Academy, and I was struggling. And John was a trustee at the time and had been a superb student and a superb athlete at Phillips Exeter. But John was wonderful to take a break during a trustees meeting and to have a conversation with me. We walked the campus to have a conversation with me about the value of Exeter, the value of a good education. But the points he made were that it has to be the right fit. You have to feel you're where you will thrive, where you'll do well. But it was very good advice, very good conversation with John, and I've never forgotten that. I think I was 14 years old at that time. Fuller, you did mention our mother, Morley Ballantyne. John was absolutely superb 2 years ago, last October, when he came to Durango and said goodbye to his older sister, to all of us, and to everyone in Durango. He spoke very well about that, of course. One more vignette, and that is, as the oldest nephew and niece of that generation, Sage and John were very nice about providing me with Christmas presents after we moved to Durango. And I am here to apologize for all the thank you notes all the thank you notes I didn't write. And that John provided some railroad equipment for my electric train in Durango when I was growing up. And Sage, I always got the most wonderful books from you at Christmas time. Our father, Arthur Ballantyne, believed in thank you notes, and he was very frustrated that his 4 children didn't seem to be able to get them done. Part of it was the confusion that was created Christmas morning as we unwrapped packages and cards got lost. And so our father came up with the idea that we would, beginning 10 days prior to Christmas, open one gift and then write that thank you note. And if we didn't get that thank you note written, we couldn't open the next gift the next night. And I think Sage and John were among those who were quite surprised to get thank you notes a week before Christmas. But for all those notes that didn't get written, thank you very much. You were wonderful.
I'm Mariah Radin, Tessa's daughter and Sage and John's granddaughter. And we heard so much yesterday about what a wonderful teacher Grandpa is. I have to say Grandpa, John isn't it's not quite the same. And he was one of the most amazing teachers in my life, and I could go on about all the many things I learned from him. But I also wanted to share some stories of times I think that Grandpa was taught something by me, and how much he liked that. So one of them was when, I don't remember, and a lot of people in the family have heard this story, and it's one of my favorites, but I don't remember how old I was, but we were at Hewitt Lake, which we went to every summer because we grew up in Ithaca, New York, and it was much closer, and it was one of our wonderful summer vacations every year. And so we were at Hewitt, and I was involved in some project involving glue and moss and probably carving on some fungus that we found in the woods. And I had a pile of everything, you know, it was actually on the little storage areas by the windows, and it wasn't a very good working area, and I was on fabric and on cushions, and things weren't working very well. And Grandpa came over and he said, you need better working conditions. And he brought me to, you know, a card table that was set up for projects, and there was a light right above it, and he put everything out, and he said, for every, you know, project you need good working conditions. You need good light, you need the right tools, and you need a clean surface. And so he set me up with my very important project, and I probably did a better job. I don't know what I was doing. And on the same vacation, there was always a sailing race on the lake. And I don't know anything about sailing. I still don't. I usually get nauseous on the boat, and it's not my thing. But I was with Grandpa, and we weren't doing very well. He was getting really frustrated, and he's sort of yelling at, you know, barking orders and getting pissed off. And it's not his usual demeanor. And I said, Grandpa, wait. Do you have the right working conditions? Is there enough light? What tools do we need? And he laughed so heartily and smiled and just seemed to get such pleasure out of the fact that I had told him, you know, his own lesson, but it was so appropriate. And another experience was when I was 15. And by the time I was 15, without any permission from my dear, loving, wonderful mother, I had pierced my belly button, both of my tragus, this little piece on your ear. I might have had a tongue ring too, I don't know. I was a bit rebellious. I'm a lawyer now, so I've worked it all out, but Grandpa and Gran came to Ithaca, which was another rare experience because we usually went to Minnesota or we met at Hewitt, so coming to Ithaca was a special occasion. And I don't know how exactly the conversation got started, but Grandpa said he wanted a tattoo, and did I know where he could get one? And I did, because I could take him to Rosie, who had done all of my piercings, you know. And so Grandpa and I went and got a tattoo, or he got the tattoo, but I took him. And it was, you know, it wasn't in a shop even. It was in this guy's house. And it was like an attic, a sort of lofty attic. It was all very clean. I'm sure it was sterile, you know. And he was unfazed by taking, you know, our trip together to Rosie's attic where he was going to get his first tattoo. And I thought it was just, at the time, I just thought, oh gosh, I have such a cool grandfather. He's going to get a tattoo with me, and I know where to go. This is like, but in hindsight and throughout my life, and he did this many times, but it was, just felt like such a wonderful, non-judgmental acknowledgement of who I was and what I was going through, and doing it with me. And he did that throughout my life. I was going to tell you that as soon as I could catch my voice. He got a tattoo, and he didn't tell anyone what he was going to get. And I just saw it as he did it. But he got a tattoo of a heart with a lightning bolt through it in the year that he and Gran were married.
Unscripted, so who knows? And Rye, thank you. That lightning bolt was meaningful to all of us. I wanted to share, as long as my siblings and mother said okay, just about the magnificence and absolutely Dad his last months were and his walk into death. He brought us, for me, it certainly started lung cancer, 3 years in March of '09, the diagnosis. So we all knew 3 years, or we had some years. That was the focus. But what I really wanted to share, it was so Dad, those last 4 months, really beginning to, when he said, I think I'm ready for hospice. But don't really send a big newsletter out because then people think the worst. And he invited his family to join him with open arms, open hands, to walk with him. His chin was held high, his eyes wide open, his courage right there. And he would share what was going on for him, check in with us. He was available. And he said, I want to die at home with my family. That you can do that, because I wasn't living here. That'll be Jay's story. And this is just so Dad. So, things were beginning to weaken in March. And Mom had a very important date in New York City, Merce Cunningham Dance Foundation. And she had stayed home for one in December to be with Dad because he had a very low moment in December, and she did not go. But a lot of family members were there in New York. So she got tweets, not tweets, texts and photos through me, because I stayed with Mom and Dad, and that was a very rich time. But Mom came home from New York City on a Friday afternoon, and I got a call from my sister that Friday morning saying, come sooner than you anticipated. So I flew in, and Fuller was on his way from Antigua. And we all got together that Friday night, the 16th of March. And Dad knew we were all there. He had a smile, he had an acknowledgement, and we had the next incredible 24 hours with him. Mariah was able to come. There were other grandchildren, Max, Colin were able to come, spend some time, Weston. Thank you. And that morning, the 17th, I was wearing my Obama green Irish shirt because Obama found his apostrophe in Ireland. And so that was my little shirt to wear that day. Little did I know what that shirt would come to mean for me. And we, at some point, opened up the doors to his bedroom. Fuller heard something, and the Star-Spangled Banner filled the room. One of Dad's favorite songs. He loved it.
And we all teared up. He got it, he heard it. And the church bells then proceeded to ring all morning. And there were quite some funny tunes, a little bit of, the one I can remember right now is Old MacDonald. And these are church bells. But there were some other good ones in there. But it was just incredible, the bells wafting through. And it was a St. Patty's Day run occurring at the base of the building, so we got to watch little green people go running off around the city and come back. So it was a very celebratory day, start to the day. And there was a hospice nurse who was an angel. She came in noon or 2 and assisted us with just creating more comfort for Dad and a big relief for Mom. She just gave a sense of calmness. We're doing exactly what needs to be done. The love poured into the room. She could feel it. She could see it. And we were with him all afternoon, telling stories, crying and sharing. And then there was a moment where he was peaceful. I took a shower. Fuller went in the other room. Jay and Paige went to get something for dinner. Tess and Mariah stayed with Dad. And Mom took a moment to take care of herself in the room, but not on the bed. And then Mariah says, "Jane, this is it, I think." And we were all able to come back in the room and be with Dad. Those final peaceful breaths, he opened his eyes, looked where he was going so clearly, and relaxing deep breaths into his journey on. His gift, he just could do it right to the very end. And he was remarkable in that capacity. And it was a very peaceful time. He stayed with us that night, and we had a very powerful morning with more stories, reading his poetry to the group that was there. And it was his poetry to help continue sending him on and allowing us to continue the process of grieving and healing. So once again, Dad, you were marvelous.
Can I, before anybody reacts to this, I just want to, while Mom was in New York, I had the incredible blessing and honor of being able to be there with him for 2 or 3 days. And that whole time, he was so peaceful. He was not in pain. He would lie on the bed and he would say, "Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah." I felt like he was kind of going through a checklist with some heavenly advisor. And then sometimes he was sort of in another place. And one time he said to me, "This is such a wonderful adventure that we're on together." And he went to France and he saw beautiful things, and so it's just another one of his gifts to all of us who will all face death, is that it can be done so peacefully and full front on and with acceptance and even joy. He had some smiles and laughs in there. Oh, yes. Mom's reminding that after he died, which Jane described, and we left his chrysalis, his shell, there on the bed all night, and in the morning he was smiling. Yeah. Yeah. So that was, yeah, it was like you, I felt moved to share those last times just with everyone. It's such an incredible teaching from him, another one.
Yeah, I think this is part of Dad just hopefully giving all of us, just as Tess said, the courage to allow our mortal process to follow suit and to embrace it, or at least find your support, because it really can be okay. Thank you.
Hi, very quickly. My name is Logan Fox. I am the son of Jill Fox, who is the sister of Sage Coles. And I just want to put out that right now I hear John saying, "I love you all, but can we get it a little lighter?" And also that the yeah is the Kleenex supply large enough? Do we have hooks for the dock? Where are? He was a master of detail and much beloved on our side of the family, and we miss him. One story that I sent you. At age 10 or 11, we as a family, or two families, took a trip down the Colorado River. And we flew into the head of the river, and I can't remember if we were going from Durango or was it from Hope Ranch? I can't remember. But we ended up in 2 or 3 smallish planes because my grandmother was so convinced that one plane was going to go down, so you had to break up the family so not everyone was wiped out. And in any case, I ended up in John's plane. And John delighted, you know, sitting up front in this 8-seater, 6-seater. And he and the pilot were chatting. I, at 10, terrified of planes, prone to throwing up. One of the first things I ever did with Aunt Sage was throw up in her lap on a plane. But on this flight down, so John, and I hear John say to the pilot, "Can you do a barrel roll?" Were you with me on this? So I could remember my face blanching and my just, oh God. And the pilot says, yeah, I can barrel roll. And we do the big, and the pilot then levels off, us, you know, head down to the earth, and goes for about 10 seconds, 15 seconds. Felt like an eternity. We come back up. I think I'm clutching Jerry and feeling incredibly nauseous and going, thank God that's over. And John, gleefully, with that big laugh, wah, wah, do it again.
Hi, I'm Anthony Fuller. I'm John and Sage's nephew. I'm here with my daughter Antonia Fuller. And my sister Mia wishes she was here. She did come out, I think, in those months. She was also out here in the fall, and she has asked me to read this. A little, not the lightest story maybe, not right up there with my cousin Logan. I will say before I mention anything, John, but really all you folks meant a lot to us on the West Coast, the weird West Coast crazy family. I was really happy to learn that your family is also crazy, but we thought we were the only ones. And I'm sure I'll forget to say this after I say this, but John, yes, but Sage especially, with the inclusion of our family and also the Foxes at Hewitt, enabled us on the West to come out a little bit more. And I echo my daughter's feelings. I pardon the language, I have an incredibly fucking cool family. I really do. And I'm very happy that I do, and I feel very fortunate that you're all so welcoming and loving. I was lucky enough to grow up with the Fox boys very closely. A little bit Fuller, Jay not so much, Jane very tiny, but Fuller a little bit, showed me around Bennington. I thought he was such a cool guy. Went and did some bad things together, I think, for 5 minutes only. But I'll read what, oh, what did I lose it? No, there it is. Okay, so some words for John. This is from my sister, Mia Fuller. She's ending the term at Berkeley right now. She doesn't mention this, but I'm hoping that she will be the head of the Talent Studies Department at Berkeley by next fall. Hoping. I don't know if that's coming about, but we're hoping. Anyway, so this is from Mia Fuller, my sister who wishes she was here. First of all, I want to tell everyone how much I am with you in spirit, gathering to remember John and share our love and respect for him. And thanks to my brother for reading this. I can participate despite my absence. I feel immensely privileged to have known John and so many different at so many different stages of my life. My childhood memories are of a crisply elegant man talking in a deep voice about incomprehensible, tantalizing grown-up things with other grown-ups smoking a cigarette. When I was a teenager, John said something to me that was probably the first effective personal comment I received from an adult. The kind of remark that snaps you out of your self-involvement and makes visible, if only for a moment, a greater perspective. I don't remember what it was. But I remained a bit intimidated and a bit in awe. Over the course of many years after that, I occasionally saw John along with Sage, as all of our lives were changing. I have happy memories of seeing them perform twice with Bill T. Jones and the excitement John exuded. He didn't seem like a remote grown-up anymore. Above all, I absolutely treasure the times that I shared with him and with many of you in just the last few years. To think of the Aegean trip that I was so fortunate to join in celebration of John and with the opportunity to spend days of playful time with him brings tears to my eyes, tears of joy, of gratitude, and of a warm heart. John's lessons for me extended beyond adolescence into my current stage of life. I loved his ethics and his directness, and I appreciated his readiness to engage in conversation, including ones where we disagreed. He always listened. Thank you, John, for setting so many good examples in life and practice, and for your kindness and for your twinkle. All of them remain present in my heart. Love, Mia. And mine will not be as eloquent, but I will just say that I blew it. I was not able to fully appreciate John Coles until maybe the last 5 to 10 years of my life. Not really. I was way too crazy, angry, psychotic, whatever you want to call it. But at Hewitt, thank you, Jill and Sage, really, thank you so much. I was able to actually sit with John and talk to him. And yes, we didn't disagree. Hell, I'm a teachers union person. Who's going to agree with that ever? But he didn't disagree, and he was really clearly an incredibly thoughtful person, an incredibly courageous person. The peripheral lives of us on the West Coast, I sort of compartmentalized his life into a very short little paragraph that I tell people when I want to tell them about my family. And it's like this incredible thing, you know, naked on stage and aerobics and publisher and poet and all this stuff. But I just wish that I would have had more time talking to John Coles myself. I felt, I mean, I don't know how many people have listed almost every book I discussed with them and then went out and bought it, and then the next time I saw them, talked to me about it. Whether it be Guns, Germs, and Steel, whether it be anything. I considered him a fellow traveler. I'm a skeptic, I'm an atheist, all those things, and John was fascinated. When I got back after our first conversation, got back to my house, and lo and behold, John had signed me up for the Skeptical Inquirer, a magazine that he sent to me. And this is after I provided him with another magazine called Skeptic, which I thought he'd never seen before, but he was miles ahead of me there. And he was, the idea of all that didn't frighten him at all. It was very exciting to him. And I felt in one small conversation, and I don't know how much he thought about this, is what I took from it. But for me, I'm incredibly fortunate that I get to teach science, which to me is, in many ways, some of the greatest human achievement in all of history. And I know we're in a gallery, and the arts are obviously a fundamental part of our families everywhere. But we also spend much time reading the newspaper about how terrible we are and how terrible our societies treat each other and civilizations. And yet, from that point of view, I felt like John and I were right on the same page. There is nothing to be ashamed of. Even at our thing at the farm this last fall, and my father just died last summer, and I was trying through my blubbering to discuss Steven Pinker's new book, a guy at Harvard, about the angels of our better nature, that we actually live in one of the best times of all. Less people starve, less people die in violence, less people die in war than ever before, and yet you would never know it. But John Coles knew it. He really did know it. Thanks.
So everyone's been talking about what an amazing man Grandpa was. Oh, sorry. I'm Reed, daughter of Jane and Anne, granddaughter of John and Sage. And I just wanted to come up. Everyone's talked about what an amazing man Grandpa was. And I will forever be blessed to have had him in my life. But through all the thoughtful moments in his life and how quiet he sometimes was and detail-oriented and such, I have one very fond memory in Antigua 5 years ago. I'm not positive on the timing, but we went out and we had a wonderful dinner with you guys and the whole family, and then we went out for night golfing. We had had cocktail hour for quite a while, and we had bought these little balls where you break a little glow stick and put them in the center of these clear golf balls. And you go out on the golf course and watch these balls go flying through the sky. And I remember Grandpa being out there. We had the golf cart, I'm pretty sure, and we're strolling around. Grandpa's out there. Cannot hit the ball. A few too many cocktails a couple times. It was so fun to watch because here's Grandpa, always on target, organized everything, and he's just swinging away, swinging a miss. And I was like, okay, so he's not perfect all the time. The cocktails do affect him. And it was just really fun to see the laughter that came from everyone golfing and balls going to miss everywhere. And it was just a fun, light-hearted memory of Grandpa. So I just wanted to share that because that was fun. I mean, we can all talk about what an amazing man he was in so many other aspects, but it was one of the light-hearted moments that I really remember enjoying with him. So.
Hi, I'm Ann, and John was my father-in-law, and I have a story that I want to tell, but to follow on Reed's story, which was absolutely classically John and hysterical, I golf, and so he was going to golf. And he found somewhere on the internet, one club fits all. And it was collapsible too. It was like, he would pack it was about this big, and he would unfold it, and it had a little dial on the end. It's like, really? You can turn that 4-iron into a 3-wood, okay. You know? It was very, very funny. And then, sometimes it would collapse when he would have it. But it was so classic, it's like, oh, wow, okay. Anyway, I wanted to tell the story that I've told some people, and it's just a really fond memory for me within the family of calendar work and family vacations. And if everybody, they remember his red day planner, right? He always had his red day, it was in his pocket, he always had it. And Jane and I would do calendar work that could last a half an hour. I mean, my day planner probably had 3 things written in it, and so we'd sit down and we'd like, okay. Then you get in the big family, it was like an inverted pyramid. And it was like, well, this is gonna take some time, because, and so he'd pull out his day planner, and it's like, okay, we'll get a family vacation, and he'd start going through it. And I remember this one time, I wasn't that far into the family, and we were sitting in the Roost doing family planning. And it's like, wow, these guys really like their meetings. So we were going to do a family vacation, and everybody was floating ideas. Well, what about Zermatt? Well, what about walking in Ireland? Or what about Africa? And it's like, okay. I said, what about Las Vegas? And I could just hear the people behind me go, oh, God. You know? Oh, geez. And then John goes, I think that's a great idea. And all of a sudden, everybody was like, oh, yeah, that sounds really good. You know, so anyway, we ended up as a family going to Las Vegas, and the bottom line is, you know, he just had so much fun. Didn't matter where it was. And the moral of the story is, you know, he just really enjoyed life. He had a good time. So thanks, John.
I'm Wiley Horde, son of Connie Coles and Fuller Coles. There's a lot that I would like to say about John Coles and Sage. One thing from the past is just how much it meant to me and a lot of people in this room, but how important it was for Sage and John to be at my graduation in California. And I remember I just, not only just showing up, I remember how much John and Sage, how much they wanted to know about what I experienced. And there were letters written while I was there, but you know, I could tell by talking to them, they were invested in what I had gone through, and they had clearly thought a lot about what was going on and how it related to their life. Sage, you and I have had great conversations about that. And then about John in general. John was inspiring to me because it sounds general, but he, and I think a lot of people agree, he made us want to be a better person. You know, he knew a lot about politics and history, but also about art. You know, there were moments where I felt like he knew way more about what I was interested in, and I was like, whoa, hey, you know, I need to improve somehow on that. And I mean, just that it made me want to reach also out of my bubble, you know, the area that I felt that I was interested in, because he was someone that had his own interests and his own preferences, but also extended to our preferences, you know, and things that we really enjoyed, because he was hungry and he wanted to learn about it. And I'll never forget a recent trip that John and Sage just made to Berlin, Germany last year. And with Sandra, a new member of the family coming up. And John always had a very, in my mind, a very short but very special relationship with Sandra. And I know that Sandra, I just spoke with her this morning, and she sends you all her love, and I know would have really liked to be here. But anyway, I just remember being at a table. We were at the Adlon Hotel with Sandra, Sage, and John. And John, it was very important for John to tell us 3 points about the Obama administration that, I won't say if he thought they were good or bad, but there were these 3 points that he wanted to go through. And Sage was, I think, rolling her eyes a bit. And after the third point, he asked if anyone had any comments. Sandra mentioned a couple things, Sage mentioned a couple things, and I felt like I had this really great thing to tell John. And John and I were sitting next to each other, and I'm telling John what I was, you know, planning the whole time he was going through his 3 points. And John went like this. He fell asleep. Eye to eye at the table, he fell asleep. And I never let him down for that. We always talked. Anyway, I love you, John, and I love you all.
on this at all. I've never used the microphone before. Hello? Okay. Were you telling me to get up here or get the children out? I wasn't sure. See, I used to look at Sage, she goes. So I'm sorry, I'm Sarah. I am Ira's daughter who is married to Tessa. And mother of the 2 little ones. And I'm stained already, I'm sorry. And so anyway, I guess John has been part of my life for 18 years now, right? Did you guys get married almost 18 years? And I was already 18, but he was not a new figure in my life. Like it's a long story, but I grew up with Joshi and Mariah basically, and have heard about Grandpa John and Grandma Sage for a long time. And they were always going to Minnesota and coming back with funny stories. And I learned from them at a very young age that when you're done with dinner, you put your fork at the 4 o'clock, and that means that you're done. Like I learned that very young. So anyway, you knew it before I did. Yeah. And so I guess shortly after they got married, we came out and a couple times, and then I graduated college a couple years later, and I remember getting this really big, heavy box to my tiny apartment in New York, and it was this present from John and Sage for graduation, and it was the latest dictionary, the latest thesaurus, and the latest world map, And I was like, young 20s. No offense to the young 20s, but I was like, I have spell check, like. But and of course at the time I was like, oh, that's kind of weird, but kind of cool, and over the years, it's great. I still have them. Obviously, they're out of date, but it has served me well. It really impressed some guys a couple times. Anyway, it was one of those things when people were talking yesterday, I was like, yes, these lessons just keep coming back to me, and the appreciation for him, and Sage as well. I mean, just really has grown over time, and thank you, And I also just wanted to share an image that I have. I have a picture of John from a trip to Mexico that we went on, and was it his birthday also? 70th birthday, yeah. And it was wild. Like, this was the first time that I had been on like a big family vacation, and it was wild. And Tessa's dad was also, it was just like this big thing, and it was just a huge party, beautiful, beautiful villa, and everybody was really drunk. And I have a picture of John. There were like lots of wigs and like tinsel things, and I have a picture of him wearing this tinsel wig and with bangs and like his glasses, and it was just really wonderful. I wish I had the time to get it out of whatever box it is in somewhere, but it's a very strong image in my mind. That just with all of his, he really is a huge person. I think that's like really apparent to all of us. And but he really just had so much room for laughter and, funniness. I don't know. So anyway, I don't really know how to tie those things together, but I just wanted to say he was very big and important and a really great man.
Please. Yeah. But
and I will speak quickly here, but number one, I am Helen Healy, Helen Valentine Healy. I am the daughter of Morley, John's older sister, and this is my Aunt Sage and cousin. Oh, that's right. And I had two things. Last night, we had some toast. We had some toast in the restaurant, and I commented that one thing I'd always loved about you and John were the way that when you came to Durango, you would walk back to the Strader from Mother's house, and then we could hear about what all the bars and things were like in Durango because my parents never seemed to get to go anywhere except the Strater or some. And you got into these wonderful places that we'd see. And apparently you and John had a great time dancing. And I just loved it that here are some people who saw a lot of a fun side of Durango that we never, at least Richard, I don't think we go see. And we need to have them back. But the second thing I wanted to say, maybe a little bit less lighthearted, is whenever I see you and would see John, family was always the word that came to mind. And it had to do a lot with the fact that in the 1980s, early 1980s, John put Mother on the board of the Star Tribune. And it was probably her third board meeting where there was the big movement to oust John. And John was the head of the family. At that point, grandfather was not doing well. And it was so hard on the whole family. I remember being afraid that our branch was going to be excluded. You know, there was this rift. You could feel it in all the generations. And you and John hung in there, were gracious the whole time to all of us, to my mother, and the rift eventually, was healed, as far as I know. And we all get along. I mean, but it was just wonderful. And when my mother was going through her period of the lengthy goodbye, you guys were right there. The whole family was right there. And it just really has taught me how important family is over everything. And that's what we need to remember, family, and then secondly, friends, because friends are the family you can choose. So I just want to thank you for that love of family. Anyway.
Come on up here, Y. Come on up here. Sage just looked over at me and said, "Can you sing a song now?" And I was really happy not to have done that, but then I thought, if I don't do it, I won't have ever done it, and that would be a shame. So the song we're going to sing was a song that Wiley and I wanted to sing to John when we were talking about Morning is Broken. This was another one. And we're going to need everyone to do this. So this is a kind of a call and response, and you'll know when to respond.
You have the lyrics?
Yeah. When I was just a little boy, I asked my mother, what will I be? Will I be pretty? Will I be rich? This is what she said to me.
Hey, Sarah, Sarah, whatever will be, will be. The future's not ours to see. Hey, Sarah, Sarah.
Sing this with me.
When I was young, I fell in love. I asked my sweetheart, what lies ahead? Will there be rainbows day after day? Here's what my sweetheart said. Que sera, sera, whatever will be, will be. The future's not ours to see. Que sera, sera. Soon I'll have children of my own. They'll ask their mother, what will we be? Will we be handsome? Will we be rich? And I'll tell them tenderly,
Que sera, sera, whatever will be, will be. The future's not ours to see. Que sera, sera. That was for John.
Thank you, everybody. The microphone is now turning off. Thank you, everybody, for being here this morning. No, it was perfect. Wonderful. Much love to everybody from all of us. Thanks.